Hi, welcome to today's video. I'm Nigel. What we're going to look at today is fitting a tow bar to an NV200. This is the Nissan NV200. You can also have the Nissan Evalia, and the tow bar I bought fits right and left hand drive models. Tow bar's down here. I bought the genuine Nissan tow bar. This is the OEM model, the one that Nissan sell. And I've also bought this thing, which is the electrical kit. Again, that's the real Nissan one they sell. The reason I went for the genuine Nissan ones was I was hoping that I wouldn't have to cut anything, that it would just fit, as opposed to some of the other manufacturers who have a generic tow bar with sort of different adapter plates. So I thought this would fit a bit better. I've now got the instructions, we've got them. It looks pretty solid. I have noticed, if you look here in the instructions we've got, this is the electrical one, and here we've got a photograph of drilling holes inside the car, and then this is the one for the tow bar itself, and you'll notice up here pictures of a hacksaw where I have to start chopping bits away. There's also bits down here where I have to sort of throw parts of my bumper away, which is a bit concerning. So we'll give it a go. It wasn't quite what I was expecting. I thought it would just bolt a bit more into place, but we'll do what we can and try and get it fitted. So first thing we have to do is get the bumper off. The instructions run me through what I have to do. I've already taken some of the screws off, so we've got, I'll bring the camera a bit closer. We've got screws up here. There's one this end, one the other side, and underneath, which I will struggle to show you, there's two bolts underneath. I can't really get the camera down there. There's two bolts, one underneath here and one under the far side, so four 10mm screws. Now you also need to get these plastic things off, and I'll show you how they come off. They look like this. So what you have to do, just get your screwdriver, gently prise in the middle. They'll click like that, and then they come out. So that's what they look like, if you can see that. So when they're in, they're clipped in, you're prising in here and pulling that out. You need to pull all those out, and hopefully that should be enough to get the bumper off. So I'll finish doing those things now. The other thing is, the first thing we had to do was remove the spare wheel. So that comes out via this. So undo this bolt, which is at the top here, take it out, and then the front wheel, the spare wheel, will drop out. These plastic things, we've got 7 of those come off. We've got 6 bolts, and that should get it off. What I found, which I hadn't seen before, was that around the back here there's one that fixes this corner in underneath here, so there's now 6 bolts that come off to get the bumper off. Now to pull it off, I was just having a go at this. It doesn't seem right, but you do just have to pull it. So if you listen, makes a noise it don't really want it to make, but that is what you have to do. Do that on both sides, and then it just comes off. These plastic stoppers, they just stay in place, the bumper will come out, and then that then comes into 2 pieces, which is your bumper and then your polystyrene piece, which you can put to one side. Okay, I've now got these 4 nuts off. It's literally just a nut, and there's 4 studs that stick out. You can see one down here. So 4 nuts come off, and then this bar should just pull off like this. That's the next. Okay, so now we're under the car. This is the bracket we're fitting, which goes under like this. So this flat piece is the bit that sticks out the back, and the angle, as I was saying before, is what bolts under this beam here. So the way to fit that is to get the single bolt. For some reason the instruction wasn't really clear about which bolt it was, but it's quite obvious if you try the 2 bolts, which it could be. This is an M10, is the one that fits. Perhaps the others provided for a different vehicle, I'm not sure. And you need a 19mm bolt. So what I'll do is just need to get that on. It's still loose. You get the bigger bolts. Now, the bigger bolts go through. They then go through these spacers and through the bodywork. These then go through, and these are those tube pieces with the flat end. They go on into the bodywork, and they're angled. You'll see how they fit up with the angle. The bodywork is not straight like this. The part of the car here, the beam, is at an angle, so the brackets are also angled. We can then put the nuts on the end. That way. With that piece from the outside and aligning it so it's the right way up, and then you can stick the nut on. Okay, we're now going to fit these big square plates. They've got one slot which is offset from the centre. The slot has to go at the back of the car, and then there's 2 holes in the side. There's either side one, it's the same plate for both sides of the car, so you just need to use 2 holes. And there's 2 holes in this plate that we screwed on earlier, so the holes will line up and screw in there. And then we've got another screw which goes through and then actually goes into the bodywork. So I'll do that up in a second, those 3 bolts, and when it's done it will look like the one I've got on this side. And hopefully you can see what I've got there. It's this bracket here. There's the 2 holes which aren't required for this side. Here's the 2 bolts underneath which bolt into the bracket. That was this bracket we put on earlier. So I'll do those bolts up and then we'll be on to the next stage. Now I'm going to look at the electrics. I'm not trying to jump jobs between the tow bar and the electrics, but the reason is that the cable that comes from the inside of the car, outside of the car, and then obviously to the tow bar has to go round where I'm about to fit the next piece of the tow bar. So it makes sense to fit the electrics now, or at least part of them. Then I can see how it all integrates together. Otherwise I'll probably mount it all together and found I wish I'd pushed a cable through or something. Okay, so we're in the back of the car now. This is on the left hand side of the car. I think for both the left and right hand drive models it's still the left. This is the plastic vent at the back of the car. There's 2 Phillips screws that look like this. I've taken out, and then this has to come off. It's fixed in the corner here, but if you just wiggle it, it pushes off. It's a push fitting, and that one comes off. If I then raise this up, you can see the next part, which is the sort of, in this Combi version, it's the sort of pocket drinks part. So this also needs to come off, this whole panel. These push fixings, again, these just push in. There's a few ways to get these off. You can just stick the screwdriver in and then lever them off like this. It's quite difficult not to scratch it, that's the problem. They pull off like that. What you can also do is, if you've got one of these, this is a circlip pliers, because you can get round each side of the push fixing here. You can use the screwdriver just to try and open the lip. get the circlip in either side and then pull it, and that way it doesn't bend it, or it's less scratching and fiddling. So I'll show you how that works. It's a bit of a two-handed job, so if you get that in without scratching it, you can then get in with the circlip spanner, open it up enough to go either side, and then just prise it open, and that seems to work quite well. Hopefully that might come off. Okay, I need to take a few more off there, and then this panel will come off and we can start looking at the electrics inside. Okay, so I'm now looking at the electric kit. I've been looking at where the routing can go for this cable. I'm going to follow what they've shown in the instructions, which is quite right. I've tried already drilling a hole. What I've done is I've actually taken off the vent on this side here. It doesn't say this on the instructions, but here's the vent. It just popped off. There's two clips on the top here and over this side. Just prise it out and it pops straight off. There's also some fluffy insulation stuff inside. What I'm going to do with the cable, it's going to go through this hole, which I'll talk about in just a second. So that drops down from inside through the hole, and there's a sort of grommet they've provided. And then underneath, hopefully you can see, there's my hole up here. It's going to come underneath the top of the suspension, round the bracket here, and then here's this piece I put on just a minute ago, and then it'll bring it round here, and it'll come over here. Now the instructions say to use an 18mm drill. I don't know who they're kidding. I've never even seen an 18mm drill, so I haven't got one of those. 18mm is quite big. What I've decided to do instead is use a 4mm drill, which is quite different from 18. That's what it looks like. That's 4. And I've started at the top, made a small hole, measured down to 18, and made another hole so that the outer top of the outer diameter on the top one and the bottom of the bottom hole measure in between about 15 rather than 18, just so I got a bit of room to tidy up at the end. Then done one left and right of that, so you've got 4. Then I've done another 4 in the gaps between, so you end up with actually basically a square, and that's what you see there. It's not very easy to get it very neat, especially when you've got this as well. I found it was easier to actually take this off and drill it from this side rather than the other side. But obviously you can do it from both, but you've got the suspension bind here, so you can't really get the drill in anyway. Whereas this side you can get your drill in, and all you've got to worry about is this lip at the top. So I've now done these holes, 4mm holes in this square. I'm now going to just use a slightly bigger drill, and I'll find that these things get so thin they'll start to break, and I'll use the drill hopefully without snapping it to just clear that up. Okay, so I've finished the hole. It is about 18mm, give or take, and that's what it looks like. Actually came out surprisingly easily, that middle bit, and then I've just used a round file to open it up. If you can see it from the back. There we are. So what I'm going to do now is just, I've got some Hammerite paint here, so I'm just going to put a bit of that over it, just to stop any rust that might start. Then I'll put the grommet in, push the cable through, and then we'll go back to doing the tow bar again. Right, I'm now going to fit this great big bar here. These two angles that come off go onto these plates we put on earlier. Now I just had a quick look at this, and because I'd done the bolts up underneath, which is what it said, there's now no play to push these apart, and so this wouldn't fit on. So I've now had to slacken those two bolts, that's the ones that go into the bodywork, off, and now it's got a bit more room. It's still not ready enough, so what I need to do is get a screwdriver with those bolts completely slack. I should be able to just, if I can get it in, do that. So use the screwdriver to put it in, and then I can put the align it up and stick the bolts in. Right, so I'll do those bolts up and then we'll move on to the next part. We've now used about, I think it was 15, 16, 17, 18 and 19 and 20 mil sockets. So it's got a wide range of bolts on this car when you're doing it up, so make sure you've got a full complement of tools. So now we've come to the bit I was least looking forward to, which is cutting holes in the bumper. There's 3 holes which Jasper will show you. Hold that up. 3 holes on this bit of paper here which we have to cut. So on here there's this part here. Do you want to point to that, Gabby? This part. And we need to cut a big square out here, which my able assistant will point to. Over here, yep, this one. Point to this one. And then we have to cut off this tag here. Point to this one. So I now need to cut those 3 pieces out. I don't really want to, but I have checked and they do need to come off or else the bumper won't go back on. So obviously they're not going to ask us to cut bits off the bumper unless it's really necessary. So I'm going to cut those 3 bits off now and then I think there's some other bits to cut off after that. So we'll do these 3 and then look at what's next. Isn't it? How was that? Was that fine for you?
Yeah, a bit. Let's do this first. Let's do first. Hi guys.
Okay.
We're back for another video. This is our 3rd video.
Our 3rd video. Right. Here's the holes we cut.
The first one was very short. So if you want to watch that, just go and watch.
You have to show which holes we've cut. Which holes did we cut?
So while you were gone, while we weren't doing any video, we cut this hole and this hole. So now I made a rectangle here. 2 squares here, and it's like a little pattern.
Yeah.
Symmetrical. And leave a like down below if you wanted to.
So that's the holes we've cut, and we also cut a little flap off here.
And this is our first grown-up video. The first time.
And we also, rather than cutting straight across, we took it this is at an angle. These holes are actually a lot bigger than they need to be, so you can always make them a little bit smaller than it shows on the instructions.
And also, Papa, they're going to show you how you like me necklace.
Very good. Now we're going to try and put this back on the car.
And look, this is what we did while you gone.
A van.
The tire is now sticking underneath.
Oh no, first we have to do the other job.
What job? And it's my brother. Guys, come look.
The other job we need to do first, if I spin this around, take it off.
My brother is here. Hello. So this is what we did while you were gone.
So here's the hole we did earlier with the
all we're doing is just taking this whole thing off.
So now we need to put the cable in. So the hammerite is dried, and here is the electrical cable. We're back on the electrics now.
Yeah, we're back on the dangerous
There's this rubber grommet that we've had to put on. It's a bit tricky to get that on, but at least it's quite tight on the plastic, so it should keep it sealed. So now we need to stick this hole.
Someone might get electric shock.
So Jasper, you go to the other side, and I'm going to stick it out the other side. So you're going to get it?
I'm going to go on your side.
No, this side. You should see the cable coming through. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, guys, just to tell you, look, we have a present.
So we need to feed this cable through.
Yeah, we have.
And it was the right thing to do, to drill a hole from this side.
Nice necklace, huh?
Because now we can actually get to it and feed this cable through with this open. But obviously we now need to do this part before we fix the bumper back on. So I'll put the cable through, put the grommet into that hole, and then...
And we need another wire. You need another
the
wire.
The wires are fine, Yappy. Alright, so I've now put the cable through that grommet and you can see it there. It looks pretty neat really. Put the fluff back that we took out earlier, and on the other side that's what it looks like. So there's two sort of lumps, two like washer type shapes, both of them go through, just leaving the one on this side. So put that fluff back, you then got this vent thing which goes in at the bottom and clicks at the top and should click. Oh, it is in. And before we put the bumper back on, we've got to rescue this piece of polystyrene, which I thought earlier it was showing to put in the bin, which it clearly isn't. We have to cut it down so that it actually fits back on, because now we've got this bar in the way. The polystyrene which fits inside the bumper won't fit on. Now the instructions are really poor in explaining exactly where to cut. They show a piece of polystyrene that looks a little bit like this with a dimension on it, but because it doesn't really look anything like that at all, you can't see where to cut. So the easiest thing to do is just hold it up. That big lump is at the bottom, and you can line that up with the part where the tow bar goes. So that's the middle of the car, and you can see when you hold it up that this section's the bit that's in the way. And what I did was just line it up and then push it to make a mark, which, if I hold it this way, where the polystyrene goes down and back up again, you need to remove just this corner here. So all this middle bit's going, and part of the corner, basically to where it gets to the top. I'll show you where that is. I've already made a cut mark here, so that's where I've done it here, and exactly the same on that side. I've made the cut mark, and I'll just cut those bits out now. That then goes inside the bumper, and then we can put the bumper back on again. Alright, so I've chopped the two pieces off the bumper, off the polystyrene. That's the bit that comes out the middle. What the instructions say to do now is put these on the car, fit the tow bar, and then put the bumper on. These don't hang on anything, so that doesn't make any sense at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the bumper on before I put the tow bar on. It will fit on afterwards, so I'll get the bumper out of the way and back on. And what I've done is put this double-sided tape, it's quite sort of heavy-duty stuff. I'm going to put this, well, I've put this already on these two pieces of polystyrene, and then that will hopefully hold it in place when it's on the inside of the bumper. Before it was one piece, so it wouldn't go anywhere. Now it's in two pieces. These bits seem like they could just flop around in there, so what I've done with the tape there, and then I'm just going to put that, goes about there. It's not going to glue it in, but it's it will just stop it sliding about, I hope. And then now we can put that back on. I'm now going to put this bumper back on. I've chopped all the holes out, got 1, 2, 3 holes, and I've cut this area out here. Should clip back on. So you need to get them over these bump stops like that. Start in that corner, and then once it's round, you can just click that back on like that. Right, we're back on electrics. So what I've got here is the actual part from the electrics where you put the socket in. The inside of this pops out. You can see it's quite loose anyway, and then if you push it from this side, it pops out. You can then get to the back of it to get to these connections. Here's the wire we stuck through earlier, and there's a choice of rubber grommets. I've chosen this one. It's got the rubber here and this round piece. There's another one which is just a round piece with a hole in it. If your tow bar is different, you'll need that one, but for this standard Nissan one, where you have this bracket that fits on the side, you need this one that matches up with it. So what we're going to do is put the connections on the terminals. That will go here, clip it back into this. The rubber will go around the back here, and then we've got 3 screws that go through here. You'll see the 3 parts on the front here, and that will screw to this plate. The reason I'm doing this now before we put it on is because I can clamp it all down and get to both sides, and then it's just a single bolt from the tow bar here when we put that on, which also clamps that plate. So it's better to do this and get this out of the way now whilst you've got a good access, and then just bolt it on when we put the tow bar on. Right, well, I've now assembled this unit. It wasn't too bad. I did exactly what I said. Put the terminations onto the screw parts here. I've then pushed that back inside this plastic coupler. Put the bolts through. This rubber thing's a bit awkward because it hasn't really got any holes in it. So what you find is as you're pushing the screws through, it doesn't really go through any holes because there's no holes there. So you make a hole, but it's still, as you're turning it, as you're turning the screws, it just twists the rubber. So there are actually little dimples, for want of a better word, in the back of the rubber, and you can see where to push your screwdriver through. What I found the best thing was just to push the bolts through, push them all the way into the rubber, and then rather than doing these up with the screws, actually use the screwdriver to hold it, and then use a spanner on the back to tighten up. And that way the rubber's not getting twisted, and it should be watertight. Just make sure that this rubber comes all the way out like that, and it should make a reasonably watertight seal. If water does get in the back there, it's got a little drain hole at the back, at the bottom here anyway, so the water should come out. Okay, next thing is to put the tow bar on. So it should hopefully be quite simple. 2 nuts, 2 bolts. Here's the tow bar, and then the unit here, the electrical unit. I've not been able to test the electrics yet because it's not connected. So I am hoping it's I've done it all right. I did double check it all. Okay, and then these just go in like this. With a bit of encouragement, screw it through. It seems to be the easiest way. Okay, and then this just goes on. I'm going to put it on the back one, so I'm using the top hole of the bracket and the rear bolt. That will go on like this, and then there's no washers. The nut should just go straight on. Okay, so I'll do those up, and then that's our tow bar part complete. The next thing will be to finish off the electrics and test it, and hopefully it will all work. So, a different day, but we're doing the same job. I'm back inside the car trying to get the electrics sorted. I was struggling a little bit with the electrics, had a few questions I didn't understand, but it all makes sense now. So I'll show you the problems I was having, which are quite simple actually. So the first one, or the main one, was these 2 connections. I have to bring this down so you can see. So on the left hand side of the vehicle, and this is for both left and right hand side drive cars, it comes out of the back here and you end up with 2 plugs, and I was struggling to see where they went. Now the black one here, actually, if you read on in the instructions, it's actually quite clear. There's another little box, this box which comes inside the packet, and all that does is plug into there. So once you find it and read on in the instructions, but that comes a bit later on. The other one was this. I was looking at the 3 connections here, and it says that for both side drive cars they both plug into this side. I had all these 3 out and none of them fitted, so it didn't make any sense at all. I've had this panel off up here. Well, I say had it off, you'll see that it's actually still connected. There was one that absolutely will not come off, so now I've just left it in there. But what you have to do is, if you go around in the back here, wrapped up, if you can see that, is this one, and that is just hanging loose there. It was had a bit of tape around it, and it was right up inside there. So if you look from the top, you can see the tape. You have to cut the tape before you can get it open, and then once it's there you can pull it round. There's basically no slack in it, so I'm pulling it there as much as I can. You can just see the connector round the corner, and that is for this one, so that's going to go into there. The black one here goes into that box we talked about. We're then going to put this long white lead, that's going to come up here and plug into the earth terminal, which is here. So I'll just take the screw off, put the cable through, screw it onto here. Now I've got a right hand drive car, so it's got this extra long cable, and at the end is these two connectors. And what you see over this side is inside here. I've disconnected the light plug from the single connector in here, and this just goes in between. So what that means is that I'll just put this down. So you can see. So in here is these connectors. The socket, the female socket goes that way around. Click in there, and the male socket of the tow bar cable goes where the original light socket was, and that should just clip in like that. Now if you do need to get these apart, they're quite fiddly, and they've got the push button that even when you push it with your thumb, it doesn't seem to always want to go. Okay, that came out. But it's quite fiddly getting the first one out because the push button's around the back. So actually what I did in the end was put a screwdriver around, and if you're very, very careful, you can get the screwdriver between the gap and just use that to push it down, or even just do this. So when you're pulling on the cable, which you shouldn't really do, but if you're gentle and you've used the screwdriver to push the connector, that will come out. So that's going to go into there. Now I need to actually keep this off, because we'll need to put the cabling inside the car. So that's the next thing I'm going to look at, is how we do that. Because this is a right-hand drive car, it means that the cable needs to come from the left-hand side of the car up to the top, around the top of it, and down the side, down the right-hand side, and go into that connector which is looked at. So I don't know whether I'm going to have to take these panels off. I'll have a look at the instructions, and we'll see what the best routing is, and decide how we're going to route the cable. Hi, right, so I've done some of the connections, and I've been looking at the way the routing is supposed to go. Now in the manual, quite surprisingly, it says it should go from down the bottom where the connector was down here, up the top here, over the top on the inside up here, and then down, and then there it would come out into this other area behind the lights. Now all they're saying to do is to put it up there on the outside of the metalwork, and then they provide these sticky pads, look like this, and you're just supposed to stick them up on the inside. Well, I don't really want that. I thought it would probably sort of go inside the bodywork, or there'd be some nice route for it, but there isn't. So maybe in a van that's alright to do that, but because this is our everyday car, I don't really want the cables sort of on the outside, so I was looking at any other way I can do it. So what I've decided to do, I could have taken it literally on the outside of the car, possibly through these light fittings, and made a hole in there, but you're always going to get water leakage. I could have actually quite easily done that, run it through the bumper. The cable's protected in a sort of plastic covering around all the cables. This is the same stuff that runs on the outside of the car underneath the tail bar anyway, so it's very waterproof. I didn't want to do that. I decided instead to do this. So you can see what I've done down here. So this is where the connectors are. You can see them just up here. I brought it down here. I've actually cut a little slot in here, and I've cut the pad up. I put one round one side, one round the other, one across the bottom, then I've got a bigger pad with little slots in the side of it on top of that, so there's no way that the cables are going to get chopped there. I'm then bringing it through here, straight across here. This is where you can see the back of the car has these ribbed structural sections, so I'm going to bring it round here, around this side where this rib comes down, and then up round this one and round. Now I want to keep away from this. I do use these hooks occasionally, and what I've started doing is just cutting a very small slot within the matting underneath the car. What that means is it will sit in that slot, and then if we're putting pressure on the mat, it won't squash the cable. Like I say, it's protected anyway. You could run it straight across, but because the car's sort of doing up and down with those rigid spines, the cable might get damaged, so that's why I want to take it around the edge. So if I show you a bit further back, so I'm going to come out there, round the hook here, follow all these round the back, and do the same on this side, round the back here, away from this hook, and then straight across into this. So I've started doing the same job here, and you can see I've just cut some slots. You can just use a normal hacksaw for that, or I've got one of these Bosch tools that work quite well, made very easy work of it, so you can use that, and then just take it down a bit more with the saw. Then I've just cut 2 slots. I've done it slightly off centre because round here, round the back, there is some metalwork, so just feel for a nice area. You can do it anywhere. This part here seemed to line up quite well with the where I want to take the cable. I haven't cut it off on purpose because I didn't want to get a sharp edge here, and then I bent it round like that. You just do that with your finger, and already that's actually, although it looks like it might be quite sharp, this is actually the rubber gel that they stick in the bodywork, so it's not particularly sharp. Obviously these edges are. So what I've then got is a file. Just get rid of those edges. Fine. Okay, and then I've cut these pieces. So there's 4 cut with 1 pad, and I'll show you what I did. So the first piece, you just put that. Well, actually, the first one, sorry, I wanted to do was the base. I've made it slightly wider than the hole, so that it has to, you can see, like that, so that when you push it down, you just make sure that it covers these little corners here. These pads are quite sticky, and just fold that down like that. And then take the one I just did, bring that round on the inside, and then that side. Same on the other side. You can see already that with these pads in place, there's no sharp edges left when it's going to be sat down there. But I really wanted to protect that bottom bit, not that it's going to get any pressure from anything. So that's why I had the slightly bigger pad, which is like this, with these 2 slots in it. Those slots are again just slightly wider in that hole, and I'll push that down, and that way, with that in place, it's really not going to have any sharp edges. Right, so the cable will sit in there and run straight across. What I'm going to do also is actually put some tape. I'm going to put tape on the cable, just tape it into the onto the floor so it doesn't wobble about. When the mat's down, it should keep it in place anyway in that slot in between the matting. So I'll do that now, connect it up, and show you the finished article. Right, we're on day 3 already, and finished the job last night, but it was too dark to film it, so I'll show you what I did. So the finished article, you can see down on this side the wires come out of that hole. Put tape around it just to hold it all in place. Comes round that fixing eye, straight across, just more tape across this side, and then disappears into the hole over that side. And you can see I've cut a slot out of that side and that side, but not along the front, because when it comes down you see the fluff just comes up to there, so the cable just sits on it, so that when you do this, as long as it's in place, then it's completely flush all the way through and it shouldn't get any damage. Okay, so that's the end of the job. I tried all the lights yesterday and everything worked straight away, so actually it was fairly straightforward in the end. I was a little bit surprised that the Nissan standard one, which had these sticky pads, I really wasn't expecting that. I thought there'd be some route through the car, which is why I went for the actual Nissan product itself, but obviously that's not the case, so that seems a reasonable way to have routed it. Maybe if you've got the van, then you can stick it up at the top, but I really didn't want that. And we've got the carpet in this Combi version of the van, so that's what I went for. Now I've got to just put these panels back, and then that's the job finished. That's how to put the tow bar and the wiring in for a Nissan NV200.